G'day YouTube. So sorry I've not posted a video for a bit. I've got a bunch of projects on the go that I just haven't been able to finish, and I had COVID over the Christmas break and a house full of kids, so I haven't done anything. But I did see a question come up this morning in one of the DIY off-grid groups, and I wanted to I see it come up all the time, and people sort of appear to be desperately saying, hey, how do I off-grid? Like I'm sick of paying a power bill and I want to go off-grid, and I'm not sure people entirely understand what that means. I feel like it's a knee-jerk reaction to getting a big power bill, right? One of the first caveats I noticed I'm totally, what do you call it? I did this, right? I'm one of those people that didn't think ahead. One of my friends said to me, Luke, why don't you monitor your power system to understand where your power is going before you go and spend all this money on solar panels and batteries. I didn't listen, and when I did implement my off-grid system, I could suddenly see where my power was going and I got more energy efficient. So before anybody embarks on this journey, you really want to know where your power is going first, because you might find, like I did, that I had a faulty piece of equipment. In any event, for the people who have got their heart set on it, your power bill is your friend. Like that's how you can roughly determine the size of your solar system, right? So using my house as an example, we'll talk about how we figured out what size we needed. I mean, we figured it out by trial and error, but there's you could extrapolate from your power bill, as well as if you've already got solar and you're backfeeding the grid. That helps as well. That's a very good indication of your charge capacity and the size of the battery that you could have. So just for the purpose of today, we will use, by the way, this is AI generated art. Some of it's a bit funky, so you can thank DALL-E for that. This is a typical Australian house. We have kangaroos on our lawn. All right, so firstly, the first question you've got to ask yourself is, you get solar. Do I have solar? Do I not have solar? Do I get solar? If you've got solar, is my existing solar big enough? You're in the best position to determine how big your battery is if you've already got solar and you've got power bills. You are in a really good position to figure out how big your battery should be. So example here is my house from 2019. This is the one we're in now. It's off-gridded entirely now, but we still have a grid connection. We still have the 5.5 kilowatt grid-tied solar system independently of our off-grid system. It's a 4-bedroom house, has split system air conditioners. It uses a fair bit of power. As any Australians know, it does not cool down in the afternoon here. So when the sun goes away, your power consumption does not drop off. In fact, it keeps on going well into the night. It's completely normal to be at 7, 8 o'clock at night and have 35 degrees Celsius outside. Even some nights as high as 40 degrees Celsius. So I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but yeah. So it can be quite warm. So the point here is that your power consumption does not drop off as the sun disappears. So we want to know, firstly, what is your intention? That's the key piece of information. Do you intend to disconnect from the grid? Are you looking just to save power? Before you do any of these things, you need to determine what your goal is, right? And you may not know what your goal is now, but you can use this sort of process, get your power bill, do some maths on it to figure out whether or not you'll get a return on investment, or like, do you just want to save some money? Do you want to get some batteries, get a hybrid system, like a hybrid inverter with some pre-made batteries? That's the path of least resistance. That's the way most people should do it. You don't want to be completely disconnected from the grid, because that comes with risks, there's caveats, and the cost of the system will go up when you need to introduce more redundancy and whatnot. The other scenario is that you're just a stark raving lunatic. You want to be disconnected from the grid. You're wearing a tinfoil hat. There's going to be nuclear war, right? I fit into the category at the bottom there. If I could build a bunker, I would. All right, so again, just following on from the slide before, we are trying to determine, well, the first thing you want to determine is, do you want to disconnect, right? And the major thing that stands out to me, that if you disconnect, you will eliminate your usage cost. When you get a solar system, suddenly your usage might drop, but if you're paying a fee for having the service anyway, that might be the major component in the bill. That might be your motivation to disconnect. So disconnecting will get rid of that service fee. But what happens if a component in your system breaks down and you're disconnected from the grid? You don't have the option to flick it back on again, right? So you will need a backup plan or a backup power source. And that might mean a generator. That might mean redundancy in your system. You might double up on your batteries and have twice as many batteries as you need. You might have the core inverter. So my system is modular. It's a Victron powered system. So I might have 2 core inverters. I don't, by the way. I've got one large one, and our backup is having a caravan that's got a 3000 VA inverter in it as well, which means we could operate at reduced capacity, and we have a generator. Running a generator costs money, and you've got to service the generator. So that's something you have to determine as well. Make a decision. Am I going to disconnect, or am I going to stay connected? That will determine how big of a system you get, and make that decision from the outset, because changing it after the fact, if you get a hybrid inverter with and you're locked into, let's say Huawei for example, you get a Huawei inverter with Huawei batteries, you're locked into the size of that inverter and to its maximum size of batteries, which limits your capacity to move outside of that after the fact. You have to change the entire system. If you go with a modular Victron system and you say, use Victron MPPTs, or you got some really big arrays, so you use some AC coupled Fronius inverters, that's modular. You can just parallel more inverters onto that in situ. So you get some flexibility, but it also comes with added cost to begin with. So determining what you want to do. Most people, you probably just want to save some money. You don't want to disconnect, right? That's 95% of people. So just as we touched on, not disconnected. That's the easiest to achieve. It's the path of least resistance, and it carries the least amount of risk. However, you will be locked into grid requirements. So in Australia, the Clean Energy Council helps with pre-approval of grid-tied solar equipment. They're not an authority. They just help with a pre-approval. So if you use something that is approved by the Green Energy Council, then the energy provider generally won't give you a hard time about installing. If you want to disconnect, that is moderately easy to achieve, provided you don't mind taking the risk. So that it says on the image here that it's moderately easy to achieve, but a breakdown might cause material damage. Yeah, you might have the power go out when you're not home because something in your system failed, or a BMS cuts the power to your inverter, because there's a fault, or critters chew through one of your wires, and you come home and all your food's gone off in your fridge. Amongst other things, you could have a faulty piece of equipment that actually damages stuff inside your house. Now, as it stands right now, in my local area, if the grid was to do something that caused failures in the house, there would be a certain amount of liability on them, and they would have to potentially replace or compensate you. Now all that goes away if you completely disconnect yourself from the grid and you're not using equipment that is approved to be used on the grid, right? So how would you calculate? Let's say, for example, you just want save some money, right? So we calculate the size of the system fairly easily. This is a Synergy bill from Western Australia. You've got this, so you can see the power generated and you can see my anytime usage. So this is power I imported, which is 1,112 kilowatt hours. This is fairly low. I already had solar on the house at the time, and this is when we were just starting to move loads off of the house's power onto batteries. So it came down to 17.93 kilowatt hours a day. So just by comparison, we were using 60 kilowatt hours a day. So even after we moved a fair few of the house's electrical draws onto our batteries, we were still consuming 18 kilowatt hours a day. So if we take the 62 days, we divide this 1,112 by the 62 days, we come up with the number 17.93. So let's just round that up to 18. So we need at least 18 kilowatts worth of battery power. But there's a problem here. Our production at 690, which is what, so this is the solar that wasn't being consumed or sent into the battery, was only 690 kilowatts. So the problem is that this number is less than this number, which means that we don't have the excess production to overcome the usage. So we've taken 690, we've divided by 62, and we end up with 11.12. Both of these numbers obviously are averages. They do not deal with peaks in consumption or troughs in production. So bear that in mind. But we have a deficit, right? We are using up more power than what we're producing. So I can immediately tell just from this one bill that at least in this billing cycle, this 2 months, the solar system is not big enough. It's as simple as that. And that's how you can tell. This power that you send back, the generation, the 690 kilowatts hours, that is your excess. That is effectively your charging capacity. If you had a battery, that's what you could charge in that 62 days. That's not much. That's I suppose that's one power wall. But the fact that we're using more than that, that's not a good thing. I mean, we could offset some of that, great, but we couldn't offset the whole lot. So that's your bill is really the source of truth when it comes to determining whether or not you want to put batteries in, if you want to be a little bit smarter about the way you're using your power. You can see here that the supply charge is still quite hefty, and but not enough to disconnect, because you know, if I was to take the loads off this, the 690 kilowatt hours, what does that work out to? Yeah, so the credit on the account, the renewable energy credit, which is 7.13 cents per kilowatt hour, nearly offset the supply charge. So the fact that I could take, if I took the rest of the loads off the grid connection and increase my off-grid connection, I could keep the grid connection there as an emergency backup. So instead of having a generator, just let this renewable energy, like the 5.5 kilowatts, offset the supply charge. And if the grid connection is there and you're not having to pay for it, it's an excellent backup, and you could save $5,000 on not having an additional inverter in your off-grid system, because you can throw a big extension cord over and plug in and get some emergency power. So yeah, circling back to what we were saying before, do you want to be in scenario 1, saving some money, disconnected, or in scenario 2 where you just go full off-grid prepper, build a bunker? So yeah, so following on from the information on the bill, if we know our consumption is going to be 17.93 kilowatt hours a day, you don't want to destroy the battery by completely flattening it to zero every single day. So contrary to popular belief, lithium-ion batteries, lithium polymer batteries, well, sorry, let me start that again. LiFePO4s do not want to be discharged all the way down to zero. Do they have more resiliency in charge cycles? Yes, they've got more charge cycles. But like any battery, the duty cycle on the battery is only X. And if you flatten it completely, you'll get your 4,000 cycles out of it. But if you don't flatten it completely, you'll get more than 4,000 cycles out of it. So what we're doing here, just as a general rule of thumb, whatever your consumption is during the day, we add 30% to that. And you're not going to completely flatten the battery. You'll have a spare 5.3 kilowatts in the battery. So the maths off the bill says that we want 17.93 kilowatt hours of consumable power for an average day. Bear in mind that some days we're going to go over that, some days we'll go under it. We need to have 5.37 kilowatt hours left in the battery to not destroy the battery. Therefore, we want at least 23.3 kilowatt hours. So I'd round that up to 24. In this case, there is no contingency. There is only the average consumption, and it would be, the onus would be on the person to develop a discipline that keeps them within their consumption every day. So if you plan to use the dishwasher, the washing machine, the dryers, you do it during the day when you've got excess solar power, not at night time. Otherwise you'll burn through your battery power really quickly. As we discussed on the previous image, the power production is less than what we need. So we would have to double the size of our solar production. So as I stated in the very beginning, we're using my house in 2019 as an example with the 5.5 kilowatt hours worth of storage. And even with only 18 kilowatt hours a day, we need a bigger solar system. Whatever we're using during the day is eating into it, and the excess is only 11.12. So the drama with using your power bill, if you only use one power bill, is it doesn't give you a healthy understanding of what happens seasonally. So you don't want to use just one power bill. You want to use the last 2 years of your power bill. And the reason for that is that weather conditions in winter can be both favourable and damning to your solar production. If it is overcast outside or the sun is on a horrific angle and your panels don't work effectively, you will get less power. The flip side of that is if it's crisp and cool outside, the efficiency of the panels can go up. So you might see spikes in your power by comparison to summer. Now, generally speaking, in summer, power consumption is huge because most people are using air conditioners to keep their houses cool. That might be the opposite in a different country. You might be in a country where your power consumption is higher in winter, which makes your scenario even more difficult to manage. So yeah, you have to take that into account. So the fact that we've been averaging the battery size, realistically, that only works for you're going to stay connected to the grid and you just want to save some money. Because if you want to go entirely off grid, that maths does not work. What you need to do if you want to go entirely off grid is you need to take your 5 worst days, add them together. So if we were to say use our 5 worst days, 64 kilowatt hours a day was an average of our 5 worst days in 2020. That was in the peak of summer when the air conditioners were not on the battery. Now, if we were to say that we want to go fully off grid, we want 5 days of autonomy, I need to cover that usage, 64 kilowatts, every single day. That's huge. That's nearly 300 kilowatt hours. And then I would need a solar farm to charge it. So that is not a feasible idea. So when you're sizing your battery, you've got to take that into account. But it very quickly lands in a place where it's just not financially worth doing it. So you could mitigate there's 2 ways to mitigate your winter time production. Is you add more panels, and just rule of thumb, if you added 50% more panels for winter production in Australia, that's pretty effective because unless you're using a split system air conditioner to warm your house, say you're using a gas fire, your power bill will come down during winter generally. Air conditioners consume all the power during summer, and during winter we don't need the air conditioners anymore. So we add 50% more panels to mitigate the winter time drop in production. The flip side is you can increase your energy storage. Now there's a caveat to that. That sounds excellent, right? So our house currently has a 90 kilowatt hour battery and the caravan's got a 30 kilowatt hour battery. And 90 sounds like a lot. It's not a lot at day 2 or 3 of overcast, right? The production sucks at day 2 or 3 and it's overcast outside. Our solar system is worth maybe 10%. Like if the power production goes from our potential 18 kilowatts, which is generally speaking what we can get on a cool, crisp day out of all the solar panels when they're clean, not including the house's solar. It'll go to 22 if we include the house's solar, but that 18 kilowatts suddenly turns into 1800 watts, and the house's base load is 1600 watts. So when the house is doing nothing and idle, it's using 1600 watts, which is a fair bit. So during winter, it might not be feasible for you to use batteries at all. So then you've got to determine whether or not your return on investment is feasible just for summer use only. So even if you were to save, let's say, for example, that you had a $500 power bill and you were to get rid of the $500 power bill, if you're only doing that in 3 bill cycles because you're only doing it in summer, then you've only saved $1,500 in the year. If this system costs you $10,000 to build, then it's going to take a very long time to pay that back. So I'm sort of the opinion that your bill is an excellent way to understand whether or not, one, you've got enough excess solar to actually charge some batteries, and two, what an average consumption from a battery will be. But you deeply have to understand the behaviour of your solar system, your existing solar system, or what a potential solar system will do for you before you can invest in batteries. Realistically, with the current expense, it's very difficult to save money by investing in battery scenarios. So realistically, it is an addiction. Certainly a healthier one than crack, but it is equally as expensive, and you have a tendency not to go stealing your family members' valuables to pay for it. So I hope that helps for anybody who's planning on putting a battery in. It's been an excellent, fun thing to do from my perspective, but I'm that way inclined as well. I like doing technology projects. So if you're wanting a set and forget, then maybe don't tackle this yourself. If all you're doing is looking to save money, then start by buying some monitoring equipment, right? We have an iota watt. There's other systems for the Raspberry Pi that, like Emon Pi. Grab those. Start by understanding where your power is going and what can you switch off. Automate things in your house so they get turned off. If you're not around, you can shut them off if you've forgotten to turn them off. There's heaps of other solutions other than putting batteries in. But anyway, look, I hope that helps. It's just another video of me rambling once again. But let me know in the comments if you've got anything to say, or if you think I got anything wrong. Thanks for watching.